Hi everyone, this week we're going to be looking at an original Xbox and installing an LCD with a single chip. It's an Xblast Lite chip. We're just going to run wires right from the pins on the chip to the LCD. Not all the pins on the LCD will be used, but all the pins on the chip will be used. So we're going to go ahead and cut enough wire and then strip just a little bit off the end of each wire so that we're ready to solder them into place. And then we'll just get right into soldering. There's going to be plenty of that. Before soldering on the wires, I'm just going to go ahead and pre-tin all of the pins with a little bit of solder so that the wires will have something to grab onto. And then we'll solder each wire onto the chip first, and then the corresponding point on the LCD. When you're soldering to the LCD, you can go ahead and just put the wire right on top of the pad. I just chose to go through the hole and then solder to the pad on top. You do end up burning your finger a little bit while you're holding it, but you do get a stronger connection because the wire is run through instead of just pulling on the pad on top. Go ahead and get each of the wires soldered on. There's a few that are skipped in the middle because they're just not used for this particular chip. Once we're all done there, we'll give it a test and see if it works. Now that I've cleaned up any flux residue, I'm just going to quickly test to make sure that none of the points are bridging. You can test on one side and it will tell you whether it's bridging on the chip side or on the LCD. And now we'll give it a test and see if it does anything. In the exciting world of modding, it doesn't do anything at all. So I'm going to hook it up to a TV, see if it makes any difference, see if it needs to be plugged in, just have an output display, and try again. So here's where I ran into a couple of issues. I couldn't access the menu on that chip's BIOS, so I did desolder all of the wires and put them onto a different chip, and then I was able to at least access the menu. I still couldn't get the LCD to light up, so I borrowed 5 volts and ground from the motherboard and figured out that the chip was actually not grounded where it should be on that K pin. So I looked up the LPC pinout and then tested on the chip to see what other point was ground and just soldered the wire to that point instead. Now I have a software controllable backlight as well as contrast, whereas just running 5 volts would be at 100% all the time. So it is working, And now what we need to do is edit some software, and then the hard part, which is get the faceplate cut and get the LCDs set into place. Make you change. So the first thing to do is make room on the Faraday cage. So just went ahead and cut it with wire cutters. You can see normal height on the left and then where it was. And then the scary part was actually cutting down the LCD so that it would fit. You just need to stay away from the traces. I didn't show it on camera because I don't have a way to hold the camera and cut at the same time. And then I did go ahead and cut a hole in the faceplate. You can see it's not perfect. I ended up making a blemish in the paint, so at some point I will have to repaint this. And now trying to test it, I panicked but realized quickly that the power button just wasn't plugged in. We'll get that plugged in, power it on, and see how it looks. And just used a couple of zip ties to make that look more like a wire harness instead of a big mess of wires. And there's the 5 volts that I borrowed taped off so that it wouldn't short anything inside the board. We'll go ahead and boot it up, and now we can see that there is kind of an ugly line there on the top column. Kind of hard to see right now, but you can see it when I get in close. The bottom is cut off. I ended up having to take the Xbox completely back apart to get rid of this line, just to make sure that it was working. It wasn't too hard of a fix. All I did was tighten the tabs that hold on the metal bracket on the front. Lines went away, put it back together, and it's looking great. There it is, all done. Quick software edit, you can make it say whatever you'd like, and then once it boots up, it will display the information necessary. Thank you for watching.